Welcome to the folks who are showing up and joining us. We're just going to wait a few minutes till we see some more participants, and we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everybody. We'll wait just another probably a minute and a half here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, welcome everyone. I'm pleased to see so many members of our community with a shared interest in Hall Boulevard able to join us tonight. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Dave Roth. I'm a senior transportation planner with the city of Tigard, and I'll be providing context and background information about our project tonight. But before I do, I want to take a moment to have our staff and consultant team introduce themselves. So I'm just going to go around my screen. Why don't we have Judy start?
Hi, I'm Judy. I'm Judy Martin, the Community Engagement Coordinator here at the City of Tigard in the Community Development Department. Glad you're all here today.
And Joe?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Wisniewski, City Engineer in the Public Works Department.
And Phil?
Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Longnecker. I'm a planner with Alta, the consultant team on this project.
And Derek?
Good evening, everyone. Derek Abe, transportation planner, also with Alta Planning and Design, managing the project from the consultant side.
All right. So run of show tonight. This is a Zoom webinar format that we'll be using tonight. And we'd like to point you to the Q&A function. If people have questions along the way, this is probably going to be the most efficient way for us to manage questions. And we'll try to collect those and answer them along the way through the presentation tonight. The chat function is off. As far as questions go, there's no bad questions. Please be respectful and know that this is a safe space for everybody as you're asking questions. That would be great. I think with that, why don't we go ahead and get started with the presentation? Okay, so we're here tonight for the Hall Boulevard Corridor Visioning Project public open house. And next slide, please. So tonight we'll cover a project overview. We'll talk a bit about the existing conditions on the roadway. And then we will have a little bit of time for questions and feedback, along with a mapping exercise that we will tell you about. And I think with the number of folks that are here tonight, we should be able to manage our Q&A when we get to that point in the meeting. Next slide. All right, so what is this project about? So it's a city-led effort to engage the Tigard community in a conversation about the future of Hall Boulevard. For the time being, we're looking at the 3-mile section of the road within city limits. And this is the section that you see on the screen in front of you. It's between Southwest Locust and Southwest Durham. The purpose of the project is to clearly define and describe what Hall Boulevard should look and feel like somewhere between 5 and 10 years from now, most likely. The final product will be a document that the city and the broader community can point to and say, this is what we want Hall Boulevard to be. Next slide. So project context. So why Hall Boulevard and why now? Southwest Hall Boulevard is an ODOT-owned and operated urban arterial that no longer serves the community that has grown around it. It's one of these old farm to market roads that became a highway, and then the community has grown in around it. The pavement condition is generally very poor. It's one of the worst condition roadways in Tigard. Many sections of the road, particularly those that have not seen recent development, are not built to current standards. So they're missing curb and gutters. You'll see roadside ditches. There's missing sidewalks, missing or substandard bike facilities, few crossing opportunities outside of signalized intersections, poor lighting. You know, I could go on. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's the road we hear the most about from our community members in terms of pavement condition and deferred maintenance. But above and beyond these issues, perhaps most importantly, the road feels unsafe, particularly for those not traveling in a car. A recent crash history illustrates this with a really horrible hit and run crash that we had earlier this spring that left one person dead and another severely injured. So it should come as no surprise that the city is working diligently to find a solution. And I'll just note here that you've probably seen and heard about Hall Boulevard a lot recently in the media, and that is intentional. The city of Tigard is really trying to elevate the profile of the need here, and we're trying to get the word out about the need. So again, we're working diligently to find a solution, but we're not alone here. About 2 years ago, the city initiated a conversation with ODOT, the roadway owner, that has resulted in a memorandum of understanding between the two agencies that spells out a shared work plan that will ultimately result in a transfer in ownership of the road from the state to the city. Leading up to this corridor vision project that you're learning more about tonight, we've been working with ODOT to define investment needs to bring the road and associated assets up to what's called the state of good repair. Really, this means these are the costs needed to address deferred maintenance on the road. And this is the starting point for the corridor vision. So we're building the corridor vision off of the state of good repair work that's happening right now. The corridor vision will define what additional improvements are needed to address safety issues, complete missing pieces of infrastructure, and ultimately create a road that's truly an asset to the community rather than a liability. So concurrently with this project, the city and ODOT teammates are developing a funding strategy that will leverage state and federal sources, among others potentially, to implement improvements that will be packaged as part of this corridor vision. You'll see on the slide here that there's an image of our transportation system plan, and I'll just speak really briefly on that. Our transportation system plan is our long-range planning document for the city for future transportation projects. And this body of work outlines policies and goals for our transportation system. And the work here for this corridor plan is aligned with those policies and goals. And a lot of what that comes down to is making sure that our transportation system works for everybody, regardless of age or ability or mode of travel. I'll also say specifically for Hall Boulevard, which got some attention in the TSP, has a new planned cross-section compared to our previous TSP. The new planned cross-section essentially maintains a up to three lane cross-section, with the exception of Pacific Highway intersection and a couple other intersections for the duration of the segment in Tigard, rather than a 5-lane cross-section, which was planned previously for some segments. So next slide, please. So again, the vision here is going to be a community-led effort. This open house tonight is one event in a series of engagement activities. We've been having focus groups with some key stakeholders, and we'll also be having some interviews with some additional key stakeholders here coming up in the near future. The goal here is to have the road work for all users, as I mentioned before, and also to be a catalyst for the type of growth that we want to see in the community, since this is such an important transportation facility. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Derek, who will cover the project schedule.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, as Dave mentioned, this is a project that is pretty grand in scope. This is the result of this project will be kind of a new vision for Hall Boulevard. And, this is just the first step in what we're hoping will lead to a transformation of the corridor as we know it, for it to really serve the needs of the community, in now and in the future, for the changing needs of the future. And so what we're doing with this effort is a relatively short process as far as planning studies go. It's about a 9-month process or so that's going to lead us into the early summer. And as Dave mentioned, again, we're just getting rolling on this. This is our first open house of the project, and we've got a couple more opportunities to come back with some ideas and get feedback from you all throughout. So as you can see on the timeline here, we are, I can't believe it's almost Thanksgiving, towards the end of November. We're having our first open house, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the work that we've done leading up to this milestone, and then where we're going next. So the existing conditions is a body of work, a phase of work that we undertook. We started this about a few months ago. And really that phase of work was to kind of ground our understanding of the corridor, of a lot of the efforts that have taken place over the last few years, including things like the transportation system plan that Dave mentioned, to better understand how well it's functioning, how well it's serving the needs of the community for a variety of different users, right? So people driving, people taking the bus, walking, biking, all of the above. That existing condition phase of work culminates in a document that we've produced. It's a 30-page document that you can find on the project website that features a series of kind of summaries of what we've found, all of the plan work that we reviewed, the studies, all of the previous efforts that would relate to the development of Hall Boulevard. In addition to that, we've done a number of analyses to understand what those conditions are actually like for each of those modes of transportation. As Dave mentioned earlier, this is the vision as it's shaping up is something that we're hoping is going to serve a multitude of transportation modes, right? So it's going to give the community options about how to get around easily, efficiently, cost effectively, and that's really what we're trying to establish here. This existing conditions memo is also features a series of maps and establishes the basis for the development of some cool ideas that we're calling concept alternatives. So that's kind of the next phase of work that we're going to begin moving into here. We're hoping that as a result of this online open house, we're going to hear a lot of great feedback about the existing conditions. We're hoping to have you weigh in on that memo, ask us questions this evening, tell us what we got right and what we may have gotten wrong, what we may have missed. We want to gather all of the information we can to feed into the development of these ideas, of these concepts moving forward. So that's going to take us into, the new year or so. At that point, we're going to bring this back to the community at another online open house. We want to get your thoughts on those ideas, right? How well do they reflect the feedback that we've received here and over the course of the next few months? Because ultimately, what we'll want to do is take those options, take those concepts and ideas, and narrow them down into a preferred concept alternative. In addition to the online open house, we'll have opportunities to present this work to City Council, to the Transportation Advisory Board, to get their feedback and their input as well. So as we kind of narrow it down and we've got a recommended or preferred alternative, we're going to be developing a series of materials, graphics, documents that explain what these options mean, right? What they mean in terms of transportation, what they could mean in terms of land use, and what they could mean in terms of a new corridor that's gonna serve the community in the ways that maybe it doesn't today, right? And then the last thing you'll see there is a concept design report, and that's a document that we would create to capture this entire process, capture everything from existing conditions to these concepts that we're generating, these ideas, and it'll explain how we've kind of evaluated them to arrive at a recommended concept. That concept design report is something that would serve as the vision document, if you will, for this process, this project. And then, we'll be in summer of 2023. So time's gonna fly by before we know it. And we're hoping that you'll be a part of this process. You'll continue to weigh in, continue to engage with us, and tell your friends and family about this project. And again, I want to encourage everyone who may have questions to type them into the question and answers box. We'll do our best to address them as we go. I know it's always a challenge to kind of save your questions at the end. So if you've got questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, feel free to share them and we'll try to address them in a timely manner. So this is just a little bit of a summary slide to show you what we've been up to with the existing conditions phase of work. As I mentioned, it's a pretty dense document, 30 pages. It includes a series of maps, some of which you see here, everything from understanding kind of the demographics and equity of the kind of adjacent areas around Hall Boulevard, the residential areas, the downtown, the commercial areas. We want to get a better understanding of who lives there, who works there, who's frequenting the area, who's shopping there, going to school. We want to understand all of these types of things. In addition to that, we've kind of mapped out an assessment of the different modal networks, and that's just a fancy way of saying, we want to understand how are people currently walking and rolling, riding their bikes, taking transit, driving through the area, and how are they using Hall Boulevard for better or worse, right? We want to understand the traffic patterns. We want to understand, the safety record. How many crashes have occurred along Hall Boulevard, and where is that activity happening, right? That's going to help us to, again, generate some of those ideas about, ways that we can improve different segments of the corridor. So I encourage you all to kind of go to the project website, download the document. It's fairly easy to read. There's a lot there, but I think it'll help you kind of better understand where we're starting from. Next slide.
Can I jump in really quick?
Yeah,
Derek,
sure.
we do have some questions popping up in the Q&A, and I think one of them was how do people access this document? And I don't think it's posted yet, but can you say when it will be ready for us to post?
Yeah, absolutely. The document will, I'm guessing it's going to be available in the coming days.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have that ready to publish fairly shortly. Yeah.
So very soon. And if you don't have the link already to the project website, I'm assuming you received it because you signed up for this meeting through that link, but we can share that out again. And I'm just gonna check in here. There's a couple more questions. So one of the questions was why stop at Locust and not go all the way to Greenberg? And that is a pretty common, frequent question that we're getting asked. Right now, the scope of our work for this project is looking at the segment of Hall that's within city limits. So starting at Locust Street and going north, the roadway is within unincorporated Washington County. And I do see we have some Washington County partners with us here tonight. I'll just say that there are some ongoing conversations between the three agencies right now, between ODOT, Washington County, and Tigard on what to do with that 1 mile section that starts at Locust. But I don't have any answers for you what that looks like yet, but something that we are discussing. Mm-hmm. And then I saw a couple other questions. Question around future maintenance. So yeah, if I didn't mention it before, this project ultimately will result in a jurisdictional transfer of the road from ODOT to the city of Tigard. And the idea here is that we get the road improved through a variety of different funding mechanisms, ideally state, federal money, so that when we take it over, it's in very good condition and it does not impact or actually improves our overall pavement management index for the city. So we will not take this road until it's improved. And then I thought I saw one more. That's it. Okay. Thanks,
yeah,
Derek.
and Dave, just kind of getting back to the question about the length of the corridor and the endpoints. One of the things that we're going to be examining as a part of this study, this visioning process, is how different segments of this particular length are going to vary. And so within this, there are going to be different ideas generated around different segments. And that's to really try to account for how different those segments might be, how they might be functioning different, how they might have a different look and feel, and how they might lend themselves to future opportunities based on what's there today, right? I think we all can probably attest to the fact that, the downtown segment, kind of the middle of this yellow line here, is going to be very different than the segments to the north and south of it. Much more residential. We have schools, and so we want to kind of break this down and understand it segment by segment, so that we can really respond to the needs of that particular area and really try to take advantage of the opportunities that lie there. So this is just another kind of summary slide to orient you with the project extents from Locust down to Durham. As Dave mentioned, this is an arterial, right? It's classified as an arterial in the transportation system plan. And what that means is it's going to have, given the needs of the corridor today, it's going to have 3 lanes. It's going to have a number of walking and biking facilities. It's going to have better access to transit stops. These are all things that we are looking to improve on Hall Boulevard. And that is in some ways a departure from what is typically considered the standard for an arterial, right? We're looking to improve on that. As Dave mentioned, we also are trying to encourage a variety of multimodal options along the corridor. We want to encourage different types of modes traveling for different trip purposes. And that's going to vary according to what we've got in front of us, what's right there on in front of the sidewalk. And we want there to be opportunities for future development. We want there to be opportunities for us to enhance what's already there. We want there to be future opportunities for us to realize the potential that might exist in places that aren't quite there yet today. Okay. What we found in this existing condition analysis is that, yeah, a lot of Hall Boulevard's currently deficient, right? There are segments of missing sidewalks. There are bus stops that are a little bit more difficult to get to, more difficult to access. The bike lanes on the street today are, pretty simple striped bike lanes. The photo that David shared earlier, you can see how that striping is fading in places. The quality of the pavement and the surface of the sidewalks are in some cases in a state of disrepair. So these are the types of things that we've tried to document so we can begin to address them and suggest some improvements segment by segment. So the very end of this existing conditions memorandum is dedicated to a long list of what we've considered to be kind of the needs and constraints and opportunities that lie along this corridor. And so that's really where we're hoping folks are going to kind of go to first and let us know, did we capture everything? Is it accurate? Are we missing things? What are you most interested in and what are you most concerned about? All right, next slide.
We do have a handful of other questions coming in, so I'm happy to answer a few before we move on if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So one question was around how this project may impact development along the corridor. And so there's the corridor concept and the overall plan to take over ownership of Hall Boulevard will have little to no impact to adjacent development until that future road is improved. So as long as a construction project or housing infill goes through the normal land use process and gets permitted, that will happen regardless. And it will be, development will be required to do frontage improvements based on the scale of the development and how that frontage situation looks for that specific development. So no impact there. There was a question about existing sidewalks that are in very poor condition, and I think that could be expanded to other infrastructure along the corridor as well. I think one of the ways to look at this is we'll spend some time prioritizing investment areas and coming up with priorities for capital projects. Most likely improvement along this corridor will occur not all at once. It will be done in segments or batches rather. And so if there's existing sidewalk, even if it's not in perfect condition, we might end up prioritizing sidewalk infill before we get back to the sidewalks that need upgrading or repair. There was a question regarding when Highway 141 was first paved. So the official Oregon highway designation here is OR 141. Prior to being called 141, this was the original 217. And there is some history online you can read about this. I don't know the exact date of first paving, but it looks like maybe in the 1930s or 40s. I'd have to go back and do a little more digging on that question, but great question. And then I saw another question come in about why the posted speed was not reduced immediately following the crash that occurred back in March up by Spruce. And we did submit a request immediately to reduce the speed there through ODOT. So ODOT has the authority over posted speeds on Hall Boulevard. And I don't know, Joe, if you have any updates there. I think we're still waiting to hear back on that one.
Yeah, the latest response from ODOT on that is it takes them about 9 to 12 months of their current queue length or backlog on these types of studies to initiate the study, and then another 1 to 3 months worth of work to determine what the new speed will be for Hall Boulevard. So based on that, we're looking at next spring, early summer, before we would hear back from ODOT if the speed limit will be able to be reduced. And we're hopeful that it is.
Thanks, Joe. So I had 2 more questions come in. Yes, the meeting is being recorded, and we will also capture these questions and try to have some kind of a FAQ on the website to respond to these. And then last question on the list here is, ODOT is doing ADA improvements to the northern segment, so from Locust on up to Greenberg right now. And the question was, how can we avoid throwaway work? And I think it gets back to, again, prioritizing new investments where there are bigger gaps and those sorts of things. So at some point, it is likely that some of that work might have to be redone, but that would be potentially years off in the future. And I think one more question just came in. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up here. Are there plans to get sewage on Hall between McDonald and Greensward, where ODOT owns it? Yeah, the idea here is to bring the roadway up to standard, and that includes the curb, gutter, stormwater, all of that. Sewer, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. We might have to respond to that later. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Dave. And just to, I wanted to, if I could, just add really quickly on the topic of, are we, recommending things like curb improvements or other changes that would, essentially replace the work that ODOT is doing around ADA curb ramps and stuff today. And I want to kind of reemphasize just that, part of the intent of this project, of this study, is to identify the long-term kind of vision for the corridor, right? Recognizing full well that there are a lot of more immediate deficiencies that we should be addressing today, right? We can't wait 10, 20 years to make these improvements for the entire corridor in one stretch. These are going to be improvements that are made over time and in over a series of phases that kind of respond to the need and are going to enable a more cost-effective investment of those resources based on those needs. So great comments, great thoughts. Keep them coming. So on this next slide, there are a series of questions that we'll walk through in a little bit more detail here, but basically these are the types of things that we want to hear from you about. How are you currently using the corridor or different segments of the corridor? What do you see as the most important types of improvements that could be made, around safety, around making it a more comfortable, attractive place? Where are you going? Where are the places that see a lot of activity that we should really start to think of as key locations on the corridor that need to be improved to accommodate greater use? right? And then of course, what are some of those challenges? What are those barriers? You know, we've documented a lot of them in an existing conditions memorandum, but we want to know from you specifically, you know, what are those challenges? What are those barriers along the corridor? So at the bottom of this slide is a link that we're going to click on that will take us to an interactive sort of mapping tool, online mapping tool that we've developed for this project. And that link should be live on our website now, live on the project website, for you to kind of explore. And if we go there, Phil, following that link, we're just going to do a little bit of a tutorial for you to kind of walk you through how to use this tool. So Phil, if you want to.
Sure. Can you see my screen, Derek?
Yeah, we can see it now. Thanks.
Great. So yeah, here's the link, tigirdopenhouse.altaplanning.cloud. You're going to see a splash intro page that kind of describes the project a little bit more. There's if you need some accessibility options, they exist here at this link. You're going to go to this public input map, and you're going to see a web map that you can zoom in on and pan around. And on the side here, you're going to see a couple of panels that'll step you through how to leave feedback. And since we're in this existing conditions phase of work, we're really looking for places where you like to go, your experience, barriers that you see when you're traveling along and through Hull Boulevard. So for example, if you want to add a place where you like to go, there's a little tutorial here. It's very simple and pretty intuitive. Essentially, you're just going to click and leave a comment. Name is optional. So I'll say Phil. I'm clicking here on the Fano Creek Trail. So I'm going to say for recreation, I like to walk and I like to walk to the Fano Creek. You can leave comments about the places that you like to go. And you can save that here. That comment will get recorded, and then others will be able to go in and comment on your comment and like it as well. So beyond just destinations, we are also looking for barriers. So concerns that you have about how Hull Boulevard is accessed, depending on what mode you do or use. And so it's the same process where you're leaving points along Hull Boulevard. You can leave points outside of the study area, and we do take those into consideration. But really, we're looking for feedback on the roadway. And you'll see here, I'll cancel this drawing. You'll see here that there's a legend. You can turn off some of the features we have included, but we do include an emphasis on the corridor, bike lanes, and trails. Let's see, anything else? There's a satellite view. I guess the final panel, if you don't have a comment for a specific location along Hull Boulevard, you can leave a general feedback. That's really helpful too. Oh, and there's one other way to leave comments. If there's a particular segment that you want to talk about, you can zoom in and click on the purple segment and leave a comment for a particular area as well. So there's a couple different ways to leave feedback. We encourage you to look at other folks' comments and leave comments of your own. There is a link also back to the city project website. Not sure if that'll show on Zoom. But anyway, yep. Am I missing anything, Derek and Dave?
No, I think that captures it really well. It's a, it's a fairly effective tool we've found to kind of gather a lot of input that is very specific to locations. And so you can kind of fly around, you can toggle on the aerial or the map view, sort of similar to, Google Maps or Google Earth. You can fly around, drop, zoom in, zoom out, drop pins where, you want to talk about something or ask a question. And then it's really, and I think one of the most powerful aspects of this tool is it enables you to see what other people have written and respond to them. So you can actually have a little bit of a discussion. You can have a dialogue with other folks in the community about whatever it is that that's been identified there at that location. So yeah, really handy tool. We've found it very effective to gather a lot of information from the community, and we're hoping that that you'll be a part of it, you'll participate in, and tell your networks about it as well.
Yeah, and it'll be up for a few weeks, right, Derek, so that folks can leave comments as they are thinking about them. So you can come back. We'll be collecting this over time.
Yeah, that's right. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, I believe we said we were going to keep it open until the 30th, but then we realized, it's kind of the middle of the week. So why don't we extend it to the weekend? So we can keep it open until, let's say, Sunday the 4th is the date that we were kind of eyeing. And at that point, we're gonna close the map. And so the commenting function will be disabled, but you'll still be able to access it. You'll be able to access this map from the project website, and then you can go back and kind of fly around, zoom in, zoom out, read other folks' comments, and see what folks have said over that 2.5 week period.
Are there any questions in the Q&A that have come through?
There are, yeah. I don't know that they're specific to the mapping tool, but
Okay.
Yeah, Dave, where did we leave off on the questions?
Yeah, I can respond to some of the the new questions that came up. So the first one was lack of maintenance seems to be the biggest concern to many. If the city takes ownership, who pays for restoration to acceptable conditions? So I tried to respond to that or answer that question at the beginning of the presentation. The goal here, the objective is to have the state pay for state of good repair maintenance needs, either the state or some additional outside funding sources. But it's not going to be on the city to bring the road up to a state of good repair. Mm-hmm. Next question was related to naming of the highway. Yes, I think it used to be called the Beaverton-Tigard Highway. It was the historical name of Hall Boulevard. Question about who is Alta. Alta is our consultant on the project, managing the project. Then we had a question regarding traffic and congestion generally. So, I think you can go back to our TSP. Well, the question specifically is what is being done to address areas of high congestion. McDonald, Durham, 99W is what is being planned enough to accommodate this growth. So we're taking a multi-pronged approach here to address, community growth needs. We're planning for a different type of growth in places such as the Washington Square Regional Center, Tiger Triangle, downtown, to provide people with opportunities to live and work, or some people, not every person obviously, but some people to live and work closer together. If you look at our TSP, we do have some specific intersection projects, McDonald, Durham being a couple examples where we are going to be doing further study of those locations. There's a particular segment of Hall Boulevard that does see a lot of congestion between McDonald and Bonita, and we'll be paying special attention to that segment. But we're also making sure that this road provides alternatives so people can choose different ways of getting around, so they're not dependent on their car necessarily, especially for short trips. A lot of the traffic is really short trips that could be accommodated with other means. Mm-hmm. Another question came up about needing to repave Hall. Will repaving Hall require waiting for this project to be completed? That's a great question. I will say most likely we'll see spot repairs until the larger project happens on Hall Boulevard. That's a different case than for Pacific Highway, our other ODOT-owned arterial within Tigard, which is actually getting a $40 million repaving project that starts very soon, in a matter of months here. During rush hour, it's tough to enter Hall Boulevard because there's so much traffic. What will be done to reduce that? Again, I'll say there's a couple of intersection projects that the TSP calls out for, but reducing traffic is reducing, part of that is reducing car trips, and we are working hard at that in Tigard. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Dave. So maybe, did we have one more slide, or was it just the question slide at the very end there, Phil?
Question slide and then supplemental maps if we want to go into those.
Yeah, why don't we throw up the question slide, because I think it has some information on where to go with additional questions and more information about the project. Got one more question there from Jim, Dave.
While you're doing that, yeah, Jim asked a great question, and it gets back to our funding strategy. So we're developing our funding strategy right now with our partners at ODOT and our city lobbyists. So the question was around whether or not the legislature will have to direct funding to this work. And if you look at some of the other jurisdictional transfers that have happened over the past few years, including some that were facilitated by House Bill 2017, that was funding coming from the state legislature to accommodate those transfers. So there are different ways to go about this and different funding sources. For a project of this scale, we will have to go after multiple funding sources, and the state legislature is certainly a source that we are looking at, and we're getting prepared for the upcoming session that starts in January to make a play there. We're also hoping if there is a legislative funding component that or other state funding somehow that we can use that to leverage a federal grant. There's some really great federal grant opportunities on the horizon right now that can help fund the improvements that we're talking about tonight.
All right, well, that concludes the presentation slides that we had prepared for the evening. All of the content that we've been working on over the last few months, and the interactive mapping tool is really going to be the instrument that we're hoping you'll help us participate in, weigh in on, tell your networks about. Again, it's going to be open for about another 2.5 weeks, 4th of December. We'll close it after the weekend, and then that map will be a link to the closed map with all of the comments preserved will be available via a link on the project website at that point. So any other questions? We'll take them general questions, specific questions. Everyone loves it.
So it does feel like we're going to be wrapping up a little bit early tonight, which I think is fine unless anybody objects to sticking around longer. I will say in terms of next steps, so you heard a bit about the existing conditions report. So that's going to be prepared here in the coming, I'll say a couple weeks, most likely, that we'll have that posted back on the project website. And you'll have an opportunity to look at that and provide feedback on what you see there. We will have, going into this winter, we'll be looking at the different concepts for the different segments of the road. And when we have some draft concepts ready, then we will have another open house to share those. And we'll also have them posted on the website. in the meantime, you have my contact information here if people want to contact me directly. We've also had a comment form online that will remain up the same duration as the maps here. And so we'll be capturing comments, and we'll include those in our materials as well. So thanks for those folks who've provided comments. And I think I saw one more question come in. Has there been any project phasing, i.e. will you start north and move south or prioritize certain sections? I think that's some of the work that we have in front of us to try to determine what makes the most sense. It does look like we'll have 3 distinct segments along the corridor, and then improvements would be, there's a lot that goes into capital planning. I don't know if Joe, you want to speak to sequencing or scheduling of work on this, but there's a lot of planning that goes into it and coordination.
Thanks, Dave. I think you covered it pretty well for right now, that this is the early phases of scoping the project and really leading into securing the proper funding sources that we need for the project of this scale. And it's really going to come down to our final coordination with ODOT as part of a transfer on what that sequencing looks like, and just making sure everything aligns with, highest priority and the funds available at that time. So a lot of work ahead of us, but I definitely appreciate all the input that we're receiving today, and look forward to more input going forward. And we will definitely share what that sequencing would look like. I think it's obvious a project this size can't be done all at once. So there will definitely be sequencing, and we will share that when it's available.
So why don't we just take about 5 more minutes? I think the team can stay on here, and if there's any other questions that pop up, we can try to answer those. But please go to the mapping website and use that. Your input's really important here. And it's a pretty fun tool to use to provide your comments.
Yeah, and thanks, Ron. So just to repeat, we're gonna post a recording of this open house on the project website as well, so you can go back and watch it to your heart's content. You can share with other folks that weren't able to make it this evening, and we'll look forward to hearing your thoughts on the mapping tool. Dave, it looks like we've got a question in the Q&A. If you want to,
thanks for flagging
that one more time.
Thanks for flagging that for me. I'm trying to scroll through here. Is all of this work predicated upon a successful transfer of ownership from ODOT? I think the more accurate answer would be it's predicated on funding. So I think the bigger puzzle for us to solve is trying to put together the package of funding required to do the improvements. The jurisdictional transfer is it's not just a technicality. It is a very important component of this project, because the jurisdictional transfer allows the city of Tigard to apply its own design standards to the road rather than highway design standards. So that's a big deal for us, but the more important piece is the funding. Any of our attendees who are still on who haven't asked a question, interested in asking a question? I still see a few people on here that we haven't heard from. And that's fine if you don't want to ask a question too. Do we expect any more stoplights from Jim Long? That's a great question, Jim. I don't think we've gotten to that level of detail yet. We know that we want to see some more improved pedestrian crossings, and some of those might require something like a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, typical safety feature that you see out on a lot of our roads today. The one location that we are planning a feature signal that I know of right now is at Faffel. I think it's outside of the city's, outside of the city boundaries, but Washington, is it Washington Boulevard or Washington Street up north that serves as the connection to Taylor's Ferry? That feels like a location that someday might get a signal, but I think there's some questions around whether Taylor's Ferry connects all the way through someday. That might change that thinking, but I don't have anything. There's nothing I know of planned there. So Faffel for sure. Washington Drive. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. We do know that ODOT is planning for a new improved crossing at Hemlock and also at Spruce. I think what I've heard most recently is that the funding for Hemlock it looks like it's coming through. We did ask, we had a congressionally delegated ask for funding for both of those locations that we supported, that ODOT put in. And we're still waiting to hear back from that. But it sounds like ODOT found some money for Hemlock within their budget. So that's going to be happening. So I think we're at time for tonight. So why don't we leave it at that? And again, for those still on here, if you have questions or other comments, please just send them my way or put them on the mapping tool. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. And that concludes our first open house. So you can find more information, everything we've covered, the recording of the open house, the link to the project website, and very shortly, the existing conditions memo that we described, all on the project website. Thanks all. Have a good evening.
Okay. Bye-bye.